Hey, what's up guys? It's Glitchy here with a different kind of video today. So I'm still working on one of my more normal types of videos, and I wanted to try and make a form of content that I can kind of push out whenever I'm actively working on something that is just going to take a bit longer, and while still being able to give you guys something. So I thought we could have some gameplay in the background where I'm just playing some kind of game, and then I'm like talking about like different stories I find about different things I like on Reddit, like DnD Horror Stories or something like that. So I think today we're going to be talking about some bad experiences some people had while playing D&D while I'm playing Minecraft on a world that I'm sharing with some friends. So if you guys like this form of content, please give a like, maybe subscribe, leave a comment what you think, maybe even talk about some experiences you've had playing D&D in the comments. But let's get right into the first one, I guess. Today we're going to be reading a post from Daniel Pass 147 on the DnD Horror Stories subreddit titled DM Steals Ideas, manipulates players, and tries to control everything. So I'm already feeling like we're in for a bit of a fun time with this. Now to start, I've been playing D&D since early 2022, and this happened during early to mid 2024. At the time, I haven't played D&D or DM'd since around right before summer of 2023, so I was super excited to when my friend, who I'll call Cleric, said that he met a group that was doing D&D and me wanting to play. I asked if I could join. He said we could ask, so we go to the meeting room for lunch. I was in high school, just recently graduated. We arrive in the meeting room and I get introduced to the following people. DM is the DM, the kobold swashbuckler rogue, a water elf sorcerer, dog person, the writer can't remember the race, ranger, human fighter, tiefling paladin cleric, and a couple other people, but they aren't relevant. That sounds like a fucking classic party lineup. Some other context needed is that I'm a big numbers guy and I like to min-max and like seeing big numbers. I'm introduced to them and get along pretty well. I get invited to the Discord server and send DM my character, a level 5 armored artificer. I've used him before, but the campaign didn't finish, along with some homebrew spells I found online, since the artificer gets a total of 1 unique spell to its class and its UA, which he approves. I'm then told that everyone in this campaign is pretty new besides the DM. I'm like, alright, that's fine, I'll go slow and help out the new players. Note, we know each other IRL, but had sessions online due to lack of cars/licenses. First session happens that I join. It's a one-shot that is non-canon to the story and sort of a way to introduce my character to the rest of the party that showed up for the one-shot, being fighter and sorcerer. We have to fight a T-Rex with a sentient goose in our party that was created by a friend of the DM and wanted DM to try out their character. This lit up my first alarm in my brain, but I ignored it. We beat the T-Rex with the goose getting the final blow. Second alarm. I don't understand how this causes any alarms, to be completely honest. I mean, whoever gets the final damage gets the final damage, but that's just me. That's how I run my games, but whatever. Something then happened between us and the goose, and so combat with the goose started. The goose that... Oh, wait. Is the goose, like, not a fucking player? Is that what this is? The goose then proceeds to try and let out a honk of fear. Me, sorcerer, and fighter roll saves. Both me and fighter pass. Sorcerer fails. I'm thinking, okay, must be a really loud goose. I attempt to tase the goose and roll a hit. The DM proceeds to roll a dex save. Major red flag. I asked him if he meant to roll a dex save since it's normally rolled a hit or save, not both. This is a massive pet peeve of mine. He says, right, then cancels the save. I mean, hey man, everybody makes mistakes. At my table, I've gotten plenty of moments where I accidentally roll a save for something where it was actually just my character. My PCs needed to roll a hit. Usually I correct myself, but you know, sometimes I get corrected and then we just move on, just keep on going. I hit the goose, and the goose is now prone. Fighter proceeds to attack and sorcerer succeeds on save against fear. The goose is now not prone, charges me, and uses another honk of fear. This set off 4th alarm since I've fought dragons before in other games and they need to at least roll to recharge their roar, and Even then, people who saved against it are immune. I don't say anything to not stop the flow and ruin the experience for other players. It eventually ends with me holding the goose's neck at gunpoint with the sorcerer begging me not to kill it. No clue why. First session with group ends, already feeling awful, but I just think it's their style of... Honestly, I don't know. I mean, there are some pretty horrendous ways you can make an enemy, but I can't... At this point, I can't tell if the goose is a PC, because they said that the friend of the DM made the goose, but I could have swore it was a player, but I think it's a little fucking enemy. A little shitter for the party to fucking run around with. A couple days later, I have my second session. Most of the group was there. Not much happened besides meeting a new NPC, a fairy dragon who I will call DMPC number 1. Okay, so the goose has to be an NPC, not a DMPC. Okay, a little fucking strange. It's a little strange. I need a little bit more information on this goose at this point. Skip to a few sessions later, I was told that this DMPC has 5 levels in Bard and 1 in Monk. Okay, a dragon that's multi-classing. Okay, which was strange because why would you give an NPC player levels, especially a multi-class? He was throwing thunder waves left and right, and as I said, I'm a massive numbers guy. He cast thunder wave either more times that he physically could, or cast it at a higher level than he could. I don't remember how much specifically, but it was bullshit. The NPC number 1 also, as expected, got the final blow on whatever we were fighting. This is also the session that I learned that there is every major NPC is just like following us, silent, not talking. I soon learned that the reason is because every single NPC that was following us was another DMPC that was created by DM's friend. And the DM pulls them out as necessary, most of which are copies of other players' ideas. So the goose is a DMPC. I understand now. Skip to a few sessions later, I was told that the fighter introduces Lizard Folk Monk that has a scarred face, and 3 sessions after that, Lizard Folk Monk that has a scarred face. That is a DMPC gets introduced. This happened to my Artificer also. My Artificer being a bit awful in social situations and was decently edgy, and it just so happens that a mechanic who's bad in social situation and gets edgy when under the influence of evil smoke. The evil smoke, nefariously evil apparently, but this is kind of shooting off in so many different directions at this point. So the goose is just having plenty of fucking like intimidation kind of abilities, as well as the honk of fear ? And then not keeping track of spell slots, or just, just saying, fuck it, I have an infinite amount of them as the DM, so surely I can use an infinite amount of thunder waves on my fairy dragon who has 5 levels in Bard and 1 in Monk. But I mean, what can I say? What can I say? Lots of nonsense bullshit happened like this over the course of the next couple months. In March, I had my first in-person session with the group, and it goes pretty well. Time skip, next couple sessions. We have a second in-person session. Both of these are hosted by the Rogue. In the previous session, we were getting to an inn, and the innkeeper was trying to scam us, so I try to intimidate and fail. So I get punished for this by the DM in-game by being forced outside and banned from the inn and forced to sleep outside. The DM tried to damage my character with 2 large mechanical hellhounds, important to current plot DM was forcing us on. I was out of spell slots and had a spell rot tattoo with Shatter. I used Shatter and killed both of the hellhounds. We were using XP instead of milestones, so I should have gotten 900. So each is 450, and we previously fought one of these hellhounds, and it was 4 of us, so it split 110 for each for rounding purposes. I get 300 XP instead to balance the levels out, despite the fact that we had level 4 characters who were unable to level up due to time conflictions. The rest of us were 5 and 6. Cut to in-person session, we all arrive at Rogue's house. I sat where I was before I was told to move by the DM. I was at the middle of the table on one of the sides, sitting next to Cleric, so I move and sit away from the guy I know the best. Squished against a wall, I proceed to sit and do nothing for the next 4.5 hours because the session took place inside the inn and I was banned. 4.5 hours into the session, a giant knowledge elephant thing breaks the inn. Roll initiative. I try and attack the elephant, managing to attack it a total of 3 times over the course of 2 rounds and then get 1 shot. I attacked 3 times over the course of a 5-hour session, and that was it. Session ends. And I noticed that Cleric also was unable to do anything and was visibly uncomfortable by the DM, getting too close yet was too introverted to say anything. Also, while sitting at this session, I was asked for help by Paladin with their character, so I tried while whispering. I was sitting next to them and got yelled, like not spoken, like actually yelled at by the DM for interrupting him, even though he wasn't talking. Okay, so this story is about to come to a close, but as many things as the DM is doing wrong, I also feel like this kind of falls onto the original poster where, if you're just sitting there for 4.5 hours because you're not allowed inside of the inn, I feel like you are able to try and do something. Like you could try and sneak in, like if you're out in the town, go get a disguise, go back into the inn. I don't think the DM, unless he was a huge dick, which kind of sounds like he was near the end, is just going to be like, no, the disguise doesn't work. They see through it. You immediately get fucked up. You get thrown right out of the bar. So I don't know, but seems like a case of wrong, not really a right and wrong. But who knows? Maybe the party just was incompatible with the DM, and, I think both sides could have done a lot. Let's move on to the next story. So our next story comes off of the Crit Crab subreddit. Shout out, even though I've got probably 1 billion times less subscribers than Crit Crab. What an awesome fucking channel, by the way. So this story is going to be coming from a guy named Hamster number 5202. So let's get started. So I need to vent. I run a campaign with a heavy focus on narrative, consequences, and a realistic world. It's not a dungeon crawl, it's a story we build together. This story just lost a player because he couldn't handle his actions having logical, thematic weight, even though I made this very clear during session 0 when I introduced the table. We're a group of friends from back in school, and I'm the only one with prior experience in tabletop RPGs. The cast. The DM, and Kevin, the player, who played Crom, a half-orc barbarian. Kevin wanted his character to become a lycanthrope instead of just having him get bitten and cursed like in the monster manual, and I wanted to make it special, so I decided to homebrew a unique form of lycanthropy, specifically for his character's arc to make it more interesting. In this version, the transformation is a powerful, spiritual blessing reserved for guardians of nature chosen by a potent spirit. This also explained why other party members who had been bitten by werewolves didn't turn. They lacked the necessary spiritual connection that I was building for Crom. This lore was perfectly set up in-game. His own lost brother, Rogar, was also a lycanthrope tied to a different animal spirit. Now, that is a fucking awesome explanation for just some basic mechanics as well as just fitting it into the gameplay stuff. I love that. I do that same kind of stuff in my games too. Love it. Absolutely fucking love it. Now, for the important context on Crom. His subclass he chose the Path of the Totem Warrior, and at level 3 he picked the Spirit of the Bear. He used the Supreme Resistance of the Bear Totem Rage in every single combat. His backstory, written by him, his origin story involved a betrayal by his younger brother who tricked him into performing a forbidden clan ritual bathing in bear's blood under the full moon. I did adjust his backstory with his consent slightly to make it more coherent. The original version was confusing and poorly constructed, but I kept all the core elements: the traitorous brother, the exile from his clan, and his spiritual bond with the bear. His intentions were preserved. I had the perfect, most epic way to grant his wish, deeply tied to his own choices. Now, I will say this is a pretty sensitive topic, but I do encourage anybody who's DMing to get their hands on all of their players' backstories and work with them intensely to fit it into the story, come up with it so then you know it just as well as the player does. Because a lot of the stories in my games, like I try to focus like an arc around each character and then tie like the big main story into the actual like overarching character arcs, basically. And if you know their backstory just as well as they do, that it becomes so much easier to just kind of hit them with things from their backstory and just hit them with those kind of like things where it's like, yeah, so you see this guy, he kind of looks like this, and this, and then that player just fucking gets in their brain. It's like, oh shit, I know exactly who that fucking is. Those kind of moments are awesome. And I mean, this kind of behavior from the DM, I can tell this guy's a real motherfucker. He's a real motherfucker. That's all I'm going to say. But let's get into what is apparently the first major red flag for this character. First major red flag popped up a few sessions ago. The party was in a poor, isolated village called Rith Ilan, I think that says, for literally no reason. Kevin's character, Crom, decides to intimidate a scrawny, terrified innkeeper, throwing him against a wall and threatening him with an axe to his head. Okay. A little bit of murder hobo energy going on here. After I had the NPC spill everything he knew, misery, poverty, and hunger, Kevin just kept the intimidation going silently, and naturally, the terrified NPC screamed for help. This led to an out-of-character argument. Kevin claimed it made no sense for the NPC to scream. I don't know, I think I'd probably start fucking yelling if I had somebody threatening my life like that too, and I was a little scrawny, poverty-ridden fucking innkeeper. The irony that he didn't find his own group of heavily armed adventurers wandering that same forest suspicious wasn't completely lost on him. That's when I realized I was dealing with a classic murder hobo, as I mentioned before. And the moral arc he ignored. This is another chapter in this DM story. To give you a full picture of how deep the story got, our quest wasn't just go kill some monsters. Eventually, they were in a goblin cave full of traps, but everything changed after a battle in a flaming arena, where goblins screamed the names of kin slaughtered in a forgotten genocide by the people of Elaren who hired them for the mission. Suddenly, they weren't just monsters, they were victims seeking justice for atrocities like being drowned, burned alive, or flayed in front of their children. All very lovely things. Turns out the city's prosperity was built on ruthless exploitation of the forest, the very disease the goblin and lycanthropes were fighting. The leadership of the city was divided between a genocide-supporting new elder and a regretful former elder, Elvana, who carried deep guilt. Rogar, Crom's brother, wasn't a cartoon villain. He had a philosophy: destroy Elaren to save the forest. Brutal, but principled. Love a villain that believes that they are right, even if they're doing the wrong thing. Or just doing a good thing, but in a wrong one. The rest of the party was fully invested. We had entire sessions of pure roleplay. They bonded with Elvana, and all the while, Kevin was checked out, DMing me in private with when's the next combat and when do I get my transformation. Now, God, I fucking hate this kind of shit. I personally have had it happen before where I have had a player like get into it with this extremely deep role play, and then when it actually came to the genuine gameplay and, you know, just sitting at the table actually playing, just fully did not give a shit. It's absolutely infuriating at it as a DM, where it's just you have a player who just seems absolutely just completely not invested in the game when you have spent so much time like preparing and having all of these thoughts for the story running through your head and coming up with characters, coming up with different like world events in the background, and then just the person that it all relates to just doesn't give a shit at all. So I completely and utterly relate with the DM here, but let's keep going. Fast forward to our last session. The party sided with Rogar and the big reveal came. Rogar was backed by the Black Lion, a powerful ancestral spirit of vengeance, summoned by none other than Elvana herself, now seeking redemption. Then it happened. Crom transformed under the blood moon into a werebear. The session ended on this massive cliffhanger, and in this moment, Kevin seemed excited. We were all hyped. But then the group chat started blowing up. At first, we thought he was joking. He'd correct us with, "You mean werewolf, right?" But it kept happening. Every discussion about the session turned into him insisting that he should be a werewolf. Days went by, it became clear he wasn't joking. It all came to a head in a final argument. I patiently explained that the werebear form was a direct narrative result of his bear totem subclass and its backstory. Lycanthropy in this world isn't a power-up you equip, it's a curse. A blessing, a transformation that matters to the narrative. It's not just press X to turn into a werewolf like Skyrim. The other players backed me up. They said it was cooler this way, and then it made more sense, that it was consistent with the story and the character, but Kevin didn't care. None of the narrative build-up, the roleplay, the character arc, or even his friends' opinions mattered. The only thing that mattered to him was being a werewolf. Not a werebear, a werewolf. Exactly like his character from Skyrim. That's it. Okay, from a certain perspective, I guess I can kind of understand where the player's coming from. It's like he has this expectation, like, yeah, I want to be a fucking werewolf. I don't want to be a bear. I want to be a werewolf. I feel like it's a little on the DM's kind of portion where it's like, you know what, man, just do a little flavor. It's got all the same stuff as like the bear subclass, but you're just tweaking it a little bit, just so instead of a bear, it's a wolf. That's all it's got to be. I mean, personally, that's what I would have done. It's like, oh, you want the bear totem? I don't know if there's a wolf totem subclass or something like that, but if there wasn't and he wanted to have the bear, I would have just been like, yeah, bro, you're a really big fucking dog. You the big dog of the party. But that's just me. But this player's been a dickhead, so I mean, personally, I might not have given him what he wanted anyway because he was being a huge dick. But now we're getting to his apparent rage quit. For me and the rest of the group, this was an unacceptable demand. Even if it was just an aesthetic detail, that detail was the result of everything built up around his character so far. It wasn't something we could retcon without gutting the entire arc. It would have been like watching the ending of Game of Thrones all over again. A forced, unsatisfying conclusion that betrays everything that came before it. Couldn't accept it. He said I wasn't collaborating and that I made decisions on my own and that I ruined his character. Then he left the Discord call and the server. Complete rage quit. Honestly, looking back, I'm not even surprised. After our game started, I got to know him a bit better and realized he's the kind of guy with some very strong, controversial political take. He's our local equivalent of a MAGA guy, thinks our electronic voting systems are rigged, and is against affirmative action, the whole package. His mindset is that his opinion is the only one that matters, and facts should bend to his feelings. This mentality bled directly into our game. He didn't see D&D as a shared story, he saw it as a single-player video game where the DM was just a buggy NPC getting in the way of his cringe power fantasy. It's a shame to lose a player, but the relief from the rest of the table and from me is palpable. It was a shocking experience, like dealing with a literal Skyrim NPC glitching out in real life. Spoiled brat throwing a tantrum because the world wouldn't bend to his will. But at least my campaign is free of it now. Yeah, I mean, I guess if he's just kind of like that in real life, then there just really wasn't any room for him to not be like that in the game. So it's probably good that he got out of there. I wouldn't say quickly, but I mean, at least he's not going to be part of any more of your games. And you know, if you are somehow seeing this OP, just know the way you're doing things is pretty damn good from my perspective. Let's get into the next story. So, this one's going to be a little late because it's a Halloween themed story, but this one is going to be our last story for the video. And this comes from the RPG Horror Stories subreddit, coming from a poster named Artmonso. The title, Player Crashes Out Because They Can't Solve Murder Mystery Under an Hour of Game Start. Let's get right into it. So Halloween is near, and I remember a 5e game I ran a few years back, maybe 2017 or so, for a comic shop's RPG game day. The organizers were running a Halloween-themed one-shot about ghosts, ghouls, and all kinds of monsters. I chose to do a homebrew, then a module, like some of the other tables were doing. They had DMs looked over it and said it was okay to play, both context and theme-wise. A classic locked room murder mystery at roughly tier 2, I believe, around a Mr. Funnelbottom, a very unlikable dwarvish banker who was hosting a dinner party to celebrate, telling everyone to go fuck themselves diplomatically, disown them from the will, and give it a good chunk of it to the temple, but leave enough for someone truly good to him and the community. So it happens that after this announcement and going into his study to send off the new will, and he and his lawyer die loudly in the room. The partygoers, including the PCs, break down the door to see that Mr. Funnelbottom and the lawyer were blasted to death by magic. So now it was the party's job to figure out what happened to Mr. Funnelbottom and his will. The PCs are an artifact alchemist, an inquisitive rogue, and a lore bard. Sounds like a pretty goddamn interesting fucking premise, honestly, but all the players were people there who known of Mr. Funnelbottom fondly to some degree. For most of the party was using pre-mades, but was asked by the head DMs to allow players to bring their own character, being a loosely connected world for the store's loosely custom setting. So enter the problem player, Brainy, the edgy teen, for its a name that rhymes with his behavior. Most of the helper DMs hated Brainy and had reported him to the head DMs, which of the 5, 2 of them were biased for Brainy, as one was a family member and the other best friends. So there was a lockup, or at least delay in disciplinary for him. So the party's introduction to the scenario, dinner party, was rushed by Brainy, trying to talk over everybody else, agreeing with the clearly shady family members who were being set up to be suspects later, and in general trying to figure out how the murder was going to happen. Even trying to run into the room where the lawyer and Mr. Funnelbottom were going to be murdered in, using his authority as a death cleric / vengeance paladin to a god that sees the long shadows to come, or something edgy like that. So back to the door being kicked in and the dead bodies. The party look over the room to see what clues they could get. But before I can start describing, Brainy yelled out, he's using Speak to Dead on the dead bodies like one who just set a checkmate in an epic cinematic chess game, being a vet of older D&D and having experienced similar shenanigans in my private D&D tables, already prepared for this and let him cast the spells. To his immediate frustration, neither of the two victims had that much information about their own murders, as the combat was so fast they didn't have the time. It was a demonic warlock who used an AoE spell while invisible to kill the lawyer and destroy the desk in hopes the new will would be among the paper. Blast knocking off Mr. Funnelbottom's glasses, where the warlock stabbed the blind banker and Misty stepped up the chimney. So the murder victims had no means of seeing their murderer's face or form to tell Brainy. Me. So you used up your questions, so can I shift to one of the other players, or Brainy?
How the fuck can they not know about their own fucking murders?
Me? First off, language. Second, you used up your questions. Anything else you want to do, or can I move on to another? Brainy.
Yeah, I got this relic from my god. It lets me be in the shoes of a dead man during their final moments.
So Brainy pulled out a printed sheet to some kind of magic item I never heard of and likely homebrewed. Well, it would give me a chance to explain other clues to the party, so I described a first-person account of the banker Funnelbottom's last moments. Being on the ground, blinking his eyes only to realize he can't see anything but a blurry haze. He tries to find his glasses, and a dark blur stands in front of him. The blur pushes something into his chest, then a sharp pain, warm liquid falling onto his back, life rapidly leaving his body as he hears a swooshing sound as his spirit releases from the body. Me. Okay, you got more info on the murder. Now, are you going to share this with the party, or was all I got to ask before the man started low screeching before it became angry, solving, and yelling? Brainy.
No, fuck you, that is unfair. Fuck you, you fucking asshole.
Before he started to throw things off the table, disrupting the other tables, the family member DM went to calm him down while the older best friend started to berate me for upsetting his friends, bullying him, and when I explained what was happened leading up to this, was told that I was being railroaded and should keep in mind that he was autistic, pointing out that I too was on the spectrum and the man was nearly an adult. Didn't go any better. We took a short break and the other players returned, which I thought it was just going to be them, and I started to run it up again when Brainy returned. Eyes red from crying, but also his tablet out. He began to order and the other players around to places that Brainy shouldn't have even known of. Apparently, he got hold of the notes I shared with the organizers and is using them to cheat blatantly. The other players had enough of this, started packing up, and I joined them while Brainy was trying to turn this into a win. All I could say at this point is, what the fuck? How did he even get access to the... Oh, well, it would have been his fucking DM friend that works at the store or something like that. That's just fucking awesome. By the way, I mean, this guy's just being a huge smartass for basically the entire game, and then when his apparent smart plays didn't work out, just started having a little fucking tantrum. I mean, I understand there's a little bit of frustration when you think you have a really good fucking plan and then it just doesn't work out, but you know, that's just how it goes sometimes. You just gotta accept it and deal with it. Back to the story. I was later asked to meet with the DM organizers for my side, and they debated amongst themselves, and it resulted in a tie between Brainy's friend and family member and the two other non-partisan DMs. The tiebreaker decided that, for the sake of fairness, I stay on probation longer for possibly provoking the situation and possibly being ableist. And Brainy is taking a break from the store and from D&D for a few weeks. Yeah, this wasn't my first strike, and it would not be my last from this store. It won't be until 2019 when plague hit, when I saw the last of Brainy, though from what I heard from friends still going to the RPG Day store events, he has already had a foot out of the door given how much of the community was tired of his shenanigans, and the store was looking to ban him as the complaints were starting to cut into patronage, and the plague economic impacts just made the encourage breaks a permanent one. Yeah, a bit of a shitty scenario. I mean, DM, for the most part, at least from his perspective in the story, handled it pretty decently, but, you know, when you've got some people against you as well as, you know, some people just wanting to be neutral, kind of a lose-lose scenario, but at the very least in the end, at some point, he got kicked out of the game. But I think that's going to be our last story for today. If you enjoyed this form of content, please leave a comment below. And if you'd feel so kind, please maybe even like and subscribe. I guess I'll see you guys in the next video, which is going to be a normal video from this type of channel. So, I'll see you in the next one. This is Glitchy, signing off.